I received my first Dragon Quest III, as a birthday present in late 2001 on the Game Boy Color. And not only did it become one of my favorite JRPGs, it also sparked a love for the Dragon Quest games that came after. However, I've always had a hard time going back to the first two that started it all, and not for a lack of effort. You see, I later picked up the Dragon Quest I and II bundle for Nintendo's first colored handheld and found both too straightforward. Despite wanting to play each game in the Edric trilogy, they took away my favorite aspect of Dragon Quest III, creating a party and changing classes. With a single hero in the first game and a set party in the second, I quickly put both down and didn't attempt to play the second again until like 2007 on the Wii. I never returned to the first. As such, I have some experience with the first two Dragon Quest games, but no particular attachment to them like I have with their sequel that canonically is a prequel. As a result, I've been cautiously optimistic leading up to the release of Dragon Quest I and II HD-2D Remake. I adored what they did with Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake, a new class, more story elements added, reworked balance, and so on, that I could almost overcome my apprehension that any new updates wouldn't be enough to modernize these titles from the 1980s. After spending dozens of hours with both games, I'm happy to report that Square Enix has somehow succeeded in giving these classics a much-needed makeover both aesthetically and mechanically by turning their archaic weaknesses into strengths. Note, I originally wrote this review for GamerGuides.com. They're putting together some amazing guides over there for Dragon Quest I and II HD-2D Remake, and I'm doing some video guides for their YouTube channel as well. I'll link all that in the description. So let's start with Dragon Quest I, which stars a singular hero on his quest to defeat the Dragon Lord. As a descendant of the hero from Dragon Quest III, it's up to him to travel around Alefgard, enlisting the help of fairies, dwarves, and eccentric mages to collect magical keys and a handful of relics. Square Enix has added a handful of characters that make this less of a lonely adventure, though they don't join your party. Early on, there's a bumbling group of adventurers that pop up now and again, as well as a more in-depth subplot for the royal guard that failed to protect Princess Guilin. While this is all surface-level storytelling, it does a great job at making Alefgard feel less like a generic fantasy backdrop that it was in 1986, and more like a lived-in world. Mechanically, there's a handful of changes that make this a truly difficult Dragon Quest experience if you're playing on the harder Draconian Quest difficulty, like I did, but still a challenging one on the regular difficulty. No longer do you battle enemies one-on-one. Instead, you'll often face several at once and need to utilize strategies that you otherwise wouldn't in other Dragon Quest games. I frequently swapped between boomerangs and powerful single-strike weapons mid-battle while abusing dodgy dance to raise my evasion in normal encounters. Bosses, on the other hand, required several attempts and a little luck to nail down a winning strategy. The rematch feature, which allows you to start a boss battle over if you fail, came in clutch here. One mandatory fight saw my hero facing down 4 dark skeletons and a knight errant that would kill me in one turn. I equipped an evasion cloak along with agility boosting accessories to make sure I survived that first turn before I worked out a strategy using Wildside to take them all out with spells. In other Dragon Quests, even on the Draconian Quest difficulty, I just overwhelmed such foes with powerful spells and buffs combined with a dedicated healer, not bothering to change my equipment at all. Dragon Quest I HD-2D, on the other hand, challenged the way I play Dragon Quest games, thus cementing itself as one of my favorite experiences in the series. To learn new abilities that help with these battles, hidden scrolls are spread throughout Alefgard. Somehow, finding them makes exploration more rewarding than in Dragon Quest III, yet at the same time, finding regular equipment, your leather shields and feathered caps, often comes paired with disappointment because, with only a singular hero, you can't use the vast majority of it. It's just fodder for merchants. Dragon Quest I HD-2D is a shorter adventure, taking about 10 hours but probably around 20 for a completionist seeking out all the mini-medals and other secrets spread about. Bite-sized but delicious, it was a mere appetizer for the huge game that it comes paired with. Dragon Quest II HD-2D Remake is a beast that surpasses Dragon Quest III in length. With plenty of new additions that better align it with the other two games, it plays almost entirely like a new adventure, clocking in at over 40 hours to finish. It also gave me a bit of whiplash when I switched over to it with a more cinematic opening, much more dialogue, a higher encounter rate, and a steeper difficulty than its HD-2D predecessor. To my eternal shame, I actually had to drop down to the regular difficulty, otherwise I wouldn't have finished this review in time. All 3 games in the Edric trilogy follow a similar pattern. Find a bunch of keys and relics and new methods of transportation before taking on some big bads. If you play them back to back like I did, I finished a second playthrough of Dragon Quest III HD-2D earlier this year. This can grow tiresome no matter how much new content is added and reworked, especially because you're visiting Alefgard thrice, though I did enjoy seeing how it changed from game to game. Unfortunately, in all three games, the overworld looks much the same. Green fields, darker green forests, sandy deserts, grey mountains, and that's about it. I long to see some unique textures and biomes, which thankfully arrived about halfway through Dragon Quest II HD-2D with an underwater realm to explore. While aesthetically a change of pace, sailing below the waves mirrored the surface mechanically. There was nothing of note to find other than some sparkling item spots on the map while bouncing between story locations and dungeons. I would have loved to see more of an evolution over Dragon Quest III HD-2D's overworld. Some diverse forests and jungles maybe, some interesting hazards to navigate, that kind of thing. Instead, all the continents I traversed through 3 different games all kind of blurred together, which in turn made the massive Dragon Quest II HD-2D a bit of a slog to close out. That criticism aside, Square Enix takes that aforementioned weakness, the lack of party customization, and turns it into a strength. The companions you travel with in Dragon Quest II HD-2D are now packed full of personality, making the adventure much more jovial and engaging. The Princess of Cannock, for instance, is a sassy, spirited girl that didn't join the adventure in the previous versions of the game, but now escapes the watchful gaze of her father to bring the party total to 4, though she doesn't join until about halfway through. Her personality extends to combat, where she provides some incredibly useful support spells but often acts of her own will. She'll taunt foes into raising their attacks, get distracted, and so on. Much like the gadabouts from Dragon Quest III. On the other hand, her brother is a loose-lipped but earnest young man that provides quite a lot of comedic relief. As a result, the interactions between the party members and the various characters you meet along the way gives this entry into the Edric trilogy a strong identity of its own. We all know by now that the HD-2D style, first adopted from Octopath Traveler, looks amazing. However, the real star here that I've neglected to mention thus far is the soundtrack. The fully orchestrated music in both the first and second Dragon Quest bring their worlds to life. While I don't have any particular nostalgia for either soundtrack, I now count them some of the best in the series. All told, Dragon Quest I and II HD-2D Remake takes the 2 archaic classics and transforms them into JRPG masterpieces that better fit into the Edric trilogy as a whole, despite how tiresome it can get to travel the same overworld again and again. I would have been happy with just a remake of one or the other, as Square Enix has gone above and beyond to show how remakes of classic games should be done by taking what made them difficult to go back and play and turning that into a strength that gives them a new identity. Instead, we got 2 fully revitalized adventures in one, making this package a must-own for any JRPG or Dragon Quest fan. And yeah, that's my Dragon Quest I and II HD-2D Remake review. If you liked it, maybe like and subscribe and check out some of the great work we're putting out over at Gamer Guides. I'm gonna go back to making Pokemon Legends ZA videos now, even though my last video didn't do too hot. Thanks, bye!